Vista Grande loomed like a beacon of salvation after hours of driving through a tempest that turned the world outside my windshield into a blur of rain and darkness. Its lights pierced the night, promising shelter and a brief respite from the storm. Little did I know it would soon become a stage for a harrowing game of cat and mouse, with me as the unwitting mouse. Checking in, the clerk barely lifted his eyes from his novel, a gesture that should have been my first warning. This place was too quiet, too indifferent. My room was on the third floor at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor that felt more oppressive with each step. The door creaked open to reveal a Spartan room that seemed untouched by time or care. But it was the silence that unnerved me, most the stillness so complete it felt like a weight upon my chest. Exhaustion led me to dismiss the unease curling in my gut, a decision I would soon regret. It wasn't long before the quiet was shattered by the sound of footsteps in the corridor, slow and deliberate, pausing outside of my door. I held my breath listening as they moved away, the sound fading but the sense of dread lingering. I tried to convince myself it was just another guest, but the seed of fear had been planted. I locked the door and pushed a chair against it for good measure, a laughable defense that offered little comfort. Sleep was a distant dream, chased away by shadows and the storm's continued fury. Then came the knock, soft, almost polite, but it filled the room with a sense of imminent threat. I remained silent, hoping they would leave. Instead, the knock repeated, more insistent this time. "Room service," a man's voice called out, too late for such amenities to be plausible. I approached the door, peering through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. As I turned away, the real horror began. The phone rang, a shrill sound in the quiet room. Hesitantly, I answered, greeted by a voice dripping with malice. "You shouldn't be alone," it whispered before hanging up. Panic set in. I knew I had to leave, to escape before the caller made good on his threat. I gathered my things, my hands trembling, and opened the door just enough to peek outside. The corridor was empty, the silence now a sinister harbinger. I made my way towards the stairs, every shadow a potential hiding place for my unseen tormentor. The hotel seemed deserted, a ghost ship adrift in the storm. The further it got from my room, the more I felt I was being funneled into a trap, the design of someone who knew this place far better than I did. Descending the stairs, I was mere steps from the lobby when I heard it, the sounds of footsteps above, pacing, then descending rapidly after me. Adrenaline surged, and I broke into a run, bursting into the lobby, expecting to find help, salvation. But the lobby was empty, the clerk gone, leaving me alone with my pursuer. The doors were locked, an attempt to keep the storm at bay now trapping me inside. I turned, facing the staircase as a figure emerged from the shadows. His smile was a predator's grin, the look of someone who enjoys the chase. What followed was a desperate game of hide and seek, me darting from shadow to shadow using the hotel's layout to my advantage. I realized then that the survival would require cunning and guile, not just speed. The chase led me to the kitchen, a maze of stainless steel and sharp corners. It was here amidst the clang of pots and pans that I made my stand. I armed myself with a kitchen knife, the weight of it both terrifying and reassuring. The confrontation was swift. He underestimated me, thinking me just another victim in his twisted game. But fear had honed my instincts, sharpening my will to survive. The struggle was chaotic, a blur of motion and desperation, ending with him on the floor, the threat extinguished. When the police arrived, summoned by the silent alarm triggered during our struggle, they found me shaken but alive, the storm outside finally abating. The Vista Grande would close its doors for good after that night, a grim chapter added to its history. I left at dawn, the first rays of sunlight piercing the clouds, a symbol of hope after a night of terror. The experience at the Vista Grande taught me the value of trusting my instincts, of the strength we possess when we push to the brink. But more than that, it reminded me of the darkness that can hide in the hearts of men, a darkness no storm can obscure. The plan was simple. Drive through the night, find a place to crash, and hit the road again at dawn. That's how I found myself pulling into the dimly lit parking lot of a nondescript roadside inn, its neon sign flickering with the promise of vacancy. Little did I know, this stop would turn my much-needed escape into a night of sheer terror. The lobby was eerily quiet, with only the distant sound of a TV buzzing somewhere in the back. The man behind the counter gave me a once-over, his eyes lingering just a tad too long before handing me the key to room 104. There was a fleeting moment of hesitation, a nagging voice in the back of my mind urging me to drive away, but exhaustion overpowered my instincts. The room was a time capsule from decades past, but it was clean, and the bed looked inviting. I locked the door behind me, double-checking the windows before allowing myself to collapse onto the bed. Sleep, however, proved elusive. There was a sense of unease in the air, an inexplicable feeling that I was not alone. A few hours into my restless vigil, I heard it, the faint, unmistakable sound of footsteps outside my door pacing back and forth. I told myself it was just another guest, perhaps a night owl like myself, unable to find sleep. But the pacing did not stop. Instead, it grew more deliberate, stopping right outside my door, only to resume moments later. Then came a knock, soft at first, almost hesitant, but it grew in intensity, more demanding. I called out asking who was there, but no answer came, only the ceaseless knocking. Panic set in, and I pushed the furniture against the door, my heart racing. The silence that followed was suffocating. I waited, expecting the worst, but nothing happened. Just when I thought it was over, my phone rang, jolting me out of the tense silence. The screen displayed the end's number. Hesitantly, I answered, only to be met with heavy breathing on the other end before the line went dead. I realized then that this was no ordinary stalker. This was someone or something that knew how to instill fear, to manipulate its victim into a state of paralyzing terror. The night stretched on, a psychological torture as I waited for dawn, jumping at every shadow, every creak of the old end. When morning finally arrived, I was a mess, a shell of myself, shaken to the core by the ordeal. I packed my things ready to flee this nightmare. On my way out, I stopped by the front desk, intending to report the night's events, only to find the morning clerk blissfully unaware of any disturbances. As I recounted my story, the color drained from his face. He hesitated before telling me a chilling tale of a previous guest, a lone traveler like myself who had disappeared from room 104 under mysterious circumstances, never to be seen again. The police had found nothing, no signs of foul play, just an empty room and belongings left behind. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had been targeted, a pawn in a sick game played by someone who thrived on terror, perhaps the same person responsible for the disappearance of the previous guest. I left the inn that morning, vowing to never return, forever haunted by the memory of that night. The terror of that night at the roadside inn remains with me, a stark reminder of the evil that lurks in the shadows, preying on the unwary. It's a horror story that's all too real, a warning to all who seek refuge in the anonymity of a lonely hotel room. Sometimes the things we fear the most are not of the supernatural, but the very real monsters among us. After hours of driving through relentless rain, the sight of Willow Creek's end's flickering sign felt like a beacon of hope. Nestled against a backdrop of towering pines, its facade was charming with an air of welcoming warmth that belied the chill of the night. Little did I know the true nature of my welcome would be far from warm. The innkeeper, a man with a gaunt face and eyes that seemed to pierce right through me, checked me in. His demeanor was peculiar, overly attentive in a manner that unsettled rather than comforted. "Your room is just upstairs, second to the left. I'll be here all night if you need anything," he said, his voice a low drawl that lingered in the air like the fog outside. The room was quaint, decorated in an old-fashioned style that matched the inn's exterior charm. However, the sense of unease that started at the front desk grew stronger here. The shadows cast by the flickering lights seemed to dance with sinister intent. I brushed off the feeling, attributing it to the long drive and my tired mind playing tricks on me. But as the night wore on, the inn's quaint charm gave way to a creeping sense of dread. It began with the feeling of being watched. I would catch glimpses of a shadow moving to the periphery of my vision, only to disappear when I looked directly at them. The air grew colder, the once comforting silence in the inn now oppressive. Then, the whispers started. Soft at first, so faint I thought I was imagining them, but they grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, words indecipherable, but filled with unmistakable malice. I ventured out of my room, seeking the source of the whispers, only to find the hallway deserted. The innkeeper was nowhere to be seen, the front desk abandoned. The whispers grew louder, guiding me, pulling me towards the inn's heart, where the air turned colder, the atmosphere denser. Drawn to the basement door, a place I hadn't noticed upon my arrival, the whispers became a cacophony of voices, urging me forward. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a staircase that descended into the darkness. Against my better judgment, I followed, the whispers my only guide. The basement was a labyrinth, a collection of rooms filled with the relics of the inn's past. In the center, a room unlike the others, walls lined with photographs of guests, their faces marked out, eyes scratched away. In the center of this macabre gallery stood the innkeeper, his back to me, murmuring to the pictures as if in conversation. His sudden awareness of my presence was palpable. Turning slowly, he fixed me with a gaze that chilled me to the bone. "You weren't supposed to see this," he whispered, his voice the same as those that haunted me since my arrival. The realization hit me with a jolt of fear. The innkeeper was the source of the whispers, a man lost to his own madness, stalking the guests who dared to stay at the Willow Creek Inn. The photographs were not just memories, they were trophies, each marked face a testament of his obsession. Escape was my only thought, a desperate need to flee this place of madness. The innkeeper, sensing my intent, moved to block my path, but his focus was on the pictures, his precious collection, allowing me a moment's advantage. I ran, not looking back, the innkeeper's whispers turning into shouts of rage. The front door loomed ahead, my escape within reach. As I burst into the night, the rain had stopped, the world outside silent but for the pounding of my heart. The authorities found no sign of the innkeeper when they arrived. The Willow Creek Inn as deserted as it had been abandoned for years. The photographs were gone, no evidence of the horrors that lay within. The whispers at Willow Creek Inn remained a chilling reminder of the night I escaped a nightmare. A story of survival that I carry with me. A warning to all those who seek refuge in unknown places. Sometimes the true horror lies not in the darkness outside, but in the madness that dwells within.